Margaret's hand froze on the kitchen door latch. Her father's voice carried through the pine boards, low and haggling, the way he talked when selling sick cattle at the stockyard. She's strong as two men, can cook, clean, keep house proper. A pause, the scratch of her father's pencil on paper. Won't give you no trouble. Knows to keep quiet. The stranger's voice came deeper, rougher, like creek stones grinding. I didn't ask what she can do. Morrison, I asked why you're offering. Margaret pressed closer, the March cold seeping through her worn calico. Through the crack between door and frame, she glimpsed them, her father hunched over his ledger, coal oil lamp casting shadows that made his face skeletal. Across from him sat a mountain man, Jonas Reed. She'd heard whispered in town with the kind of reverence reserved for men who'd killed bears with knives and survived winters that swallowed whole families. $800. Her father's pencil tapped the ledger. That's what I owe. Bank's coming Tuesday. They'll take the farm. Everything. And you figure your daughter's worth $800. I figure. Her father's hands splayed on the table, pressing down like he could push through to China. I figure she ain't getting married no other way. Not looking like she does. Least this way. She's useful. You get a woman to keep house up in those mountains. I get to keep my land. Margaret's knees buckled. She caught herself on the doorframe, splinters biting through her palm. The salt pork she'd been frying for breakfast still weighted her stomach like lead shot. Jonas stood, and Margaret saw him fully taller than any man in town, shoulders that strained his elk-hide coat, but his hands, when he reached for the coffee pot, showed no dirt under the nails. Strange for a man who supposedly lived like an animal in the peaks. Bring her in, Jonas said. What? Your daughter. If we're discussing her future, she should be present. That ain't necessary. It is if you want my money. Margaret straightened her spine, smoothed her apron with trembling fingers, and pushed open the door before her father could summon her like livestock. Both men turned. Her father's face flushed purple, caught. But Jonas Reed's expression didn't change, no widening of eyes at her size. No quick glance away like the town men who'd trained themselves not to see her. Miss Morrison, Jonas said, inclining his head slightly. Your father and I are discussing a business arrangement. I heard. Her voice came out steady, though her fingernails cut half-moons in her palms. You're buying me for $800. Margaret. Her father half rose from his chair. Sit down, Morrison. Jonas hadn't looked away from her face. She's right. That's exactly what we're discussing. Question is, Miss Morrison, what are your thoughts on the matter? The kitchen fell silent except for the pop of pine knots in the stove. Margaret studied Jonas Reed, the weathered face that might have been 30 or 50. Hands scarred but clean, eyes the color of winter creek water. He waited for her answer like it mattered. My thoughts. A laugh scraped her throat, bitter as the chicory coffee steaming between them. When did those ever figure into anything? Her father slammed his palm on the table. You'll show respect. To who? Papa. You. Who's selling me? Or Mr. Reed? Who's buying? Jonas pulled out a chair, the good one they never used, and gestured to it. Sit, Miss Morrison. Let's discuss this proper. She remained standing. There's nothing to discuss. Papa owes money. I'm the payment. Least valuable thing he owns. He said so himself last Christmas when the Henley boys... She bit off the words, color flooding her cheeks. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. Jonas Reed's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the week's worth of beard. That true, Morrison? Those your words about your own daughter? Silence stretched taut as fence wire. Jonas reached inside his coat, and Margaret tensed. But he pulled out a leather purse, heavy with coin, set it on the table with a sound like 30 pieces of silver. Here's my offer, he said, but he spoke to Margaret, not her father. You come with me to the mountains, keep house, help with the work. I got books up there, plenty of them. You strike me as a reading woman. I read, The admission felt dangerous somehow. Good. Gets lonesome without conversation. He pushed the purse toward her father without looking at him. But I want one thing clear. I need a partner, not property. You'll have your own room, your own space. You want to leave come spring. I'll bring you back myself. Your choice. My choice. The words felt foreign in her mouth. That ain't the deal, her father started. It is now. Jonas stood, his height filling the small kitchen. Miss Morrison, I'll return Tuesday morning. You decide by then. He moved toward the door, then paused. From his coat pocket, he withdrew something small, wrapped in brown paper, set it on the table in front of her. For your consideration, he said, and was gone, the door closing soft behind him. Margaret stared at the package while her father snatched up the purse, counting coins with shaking fingers. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped the brown paper. Inside lay a book, Jane Eyre, stamped in gold on green cloth binding. The pages were worn soft at the corners from reading. She opened the front cover. There, in a woman's careful script, were the words, "For Jonas, may you find someone who sees your true worth. All my love, Catherine." Below it, in fresher ink, a different hand had written, Miss Morrison. Perhaps you'll understand why I favor this particular story. J.R. Margaret's finger traced the woman's writing. Catherine. Who was she? Why had she given Jonas this book about a plain woman who found her own worth? And why did the date beneath Catherine's inscription show she'd written it only 6 months ago, when everyone in town knew Jonas Reed had lived alone in those mountains for near on 5 years? Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Margaret tucked the book under her apron as her father's fingers scraped coins across wood, stacking them in neat towers. The kitchen stank of burnt salt pork and his sweat sharp, desperate. 820, he muttered. 20 extra. What's that for? She moved to the stove, scraping char from the skillet. Black flakes fell like dead moths. Her father grabbed her wrist, spinner calluses rough against her skin. You'll go. Not a question. His grip tightened. Tuesday. You'll be ready. Let go. You got something to say, girl. The book's corners pressed into her ribs. Catherine. 6 months ago. Who's Catherine? His hand dropped. What? Nothing. She turned back to the skillet, scrubbing harder. Metal squealed against metal. Her father swept the coins into the purse, then stopped, picked up the brown paper Jonas had left, smoothed it flat, studying something. Mountain Man shops at Henley's. He held up the paper. Henley's mercantile stamp, purple ink, yesterday's date. Was in town yesterday? Margaret's hand stilled on the skillet handle. Jonas Reed came to town yesterday. Bought a book. For her. Get the good trunk from the attic, her father said. The one your mother brought from St. Louis. She climbed the narrow stairs, dust motes swirling in the shaft of light from the cracked attic window. The trunk sat in the corner, leather with brass corners. Her mother's initials, E.S.M., Elizabeth Sarah Morrison. Dead 3 winters now from the lung fever. Margaret lifted the lid, cedar and lavender. Her mother's ghost in scent form. Something white caught her eye. Tucked beneath the paper lining. An envelope. Margaret, written across it in her mother's hand. She tore it open. A single sheet. Her mother's cramped writing. My dear girl, if you're reading this, your father has finally done what I always feared. Know this. I saved what I could. Look beneath the trunk's false bottom. Use it to run if you must. You are not what they see. You are not what he says. You are mine, and you were born for more than this. Margaret's fingers found the seam in the trunk floor, pried it up. Bills lay folded neat 10s and 20s, $300 at least. Her mother's sewing money, hidden for years. Footsteps on the stairs, heavy, Her father. Margaret dropped the false bottom back in place, shoved the letter down her bodice next to Jonas's book. The door scraped open. What's taking so long? It's heavy. He studied her face, eyes narrowed. You hiding something? Just dust. Margaret dragged the trunk toward him, brass corners gouging the floorboards. $300 pressed against her ribs beside the book and letter, paper sharp as glass shards. Her father grabbed the other handle. They carried it down together, her backward, watching his face. The vein in his temple pulsed with each step. Sunday crawled by. Monday worse. Margaret packed her 2 dresses, the brown calico and the gray wool, her mother's bone hairpins, the mended stockings, a cake of lye soap wrapped in newsprint. She left the corset with its bent stays. No point pretending she'd ever squeeze into it proper. Tuesday morning came dark. No sunrise yet. Margaret dressed by candlelight, fingers fumbling the buttons. Her father's bed creaked, but he didn't emerge. She made coffee, left it on the stove, fried no breakfast. Wagon wheels crunched frost outside. Jonas Reed knocked once. Margaret opened the door before he could knock again. Miss Morrison? He touched his hat brim. Behind him, a Studebaker wagon, canvas covered, 2 mules, breathing steam in the cold. Your father about? In the fields, I expect. Jonas studied her face. That's so. She nodded toward the trunk. I'm ready. He lifted it easy, set it in the wagon bed, helped her up to the bench seat, his hands at her elbows, firm but not lingering. She arranged her skirts, the hidden money crinkling. Jonas climbed up beside her, took the reins. Anything else you need from the house? Margaret looked back at the kitchen window. Her father's shadow moved behind the curtain, watching. He didn't come out. No. Jonas clicked his tongue. The mules started forward. Town was waking as they rolled down Main Street. Mrs. Henley, sweeping her store steps, stopped mid-stroke. The minister's wife pulled her daughter closer, but nobody called out. Nobody waved. The road narrowed past the last house. Pine trees closed in, their shadows blue in early light. Margaret's breath misted white. Jonas pulled a buffalo robe from under the seat, handed it over without comment. Thank you. The fur smelled of wood smoke and something wild. An hour up, the wagon tilted steep. Jonas walked alongside now, guiding the mules. Margaret gripped the bench, leaning forward to ease the angle. There. Jonas pointed to a plant growing from a rock face. Yarrow. She looked. White flowers, feathery leaves. And that. A different plant. Silver green. Desert sage. Good for clearing the head. He named them as they climbed. Not teaching, just noting. Like a man might comment on weather. Kinnikinnick. Devil's Club. Mountain Laurel. The creek appeared sudden, rushing with snowmelt. Jonas stopped the wagon. Hold here. He waded in, water to his knees, current tugging at his pants, tested each stone before stepping. Reached the other side, waded back. Shallow enough. He led the mules in slow. Water sloshed the wagon bottom. Margaret pulled her feet up. One wheel caught on a stone, tilted. She grabbed the seat edge. Jonas's hand shot out, steadied the wagon side. They lurched forward, up the far bank. All right. Yes. 3 more hours. The road became a track. The track became suggestion. Pines gave way to spruce and fir. Air thinned sharp in her lungs. Nearly there. Around a massive boulder, the trees opened. A cabin sat in a meadow, actual milled boards, not logs. Real glass windows catching the noon sun. A covered porch with a rocking chair. Smoke rising straight from a stone chimney. Jonas helped her down. Her legs shook from the long sit. He didn't grab her waist like men in town might have. Just offered his forearm. Let her choose to take it. Your room's the left side. He lifted her trunk from the wagon. Has its own door to the outside. You want privacy. The main door stood open. She followed him in. Books, shelves of them covering one whole wall. A iron stove, larger than her father's. 2 chairs by the fire, different sizes. A table with 4 chairs, though he lived alone. Coffee grinder bolted to the wall. Dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the yarrow he'd shown her. And others. Jonas set her trunk in the left room. She looked in. A bed with a quilt wedding ring pattern in blues and greens. A washstand with pitcher and bowl. A small window facing the meadow. On the nightstand, a glass jar with mountain laurel. Pink flowers fresh. "I'll unhitch the mules." Jonas moved past her to the door. "Coffee's made. You want some?" She turned to the main room, to the bookshelves. Ran her finger along the spines. Shakespeare, Milton, an encyclopedia, farmers' almanacs going back 10 years, medical texts, and their 5 Jane Austen novels in matching binding, a woman's books. Margaret pulled out Pride and Prejudice. The same careful script inside the cover, property of Catherine Reed. Reed, not his sister. No man called his sister by her last name in dedications. Catherine Reed, his wife. The medical text beside it was Diseases of the Lungs and Their Treatment, bookmarked with a ribbon at Consumption Final Stages. Margaret opened Jonas's gift copy of Jane Eyre again. Studied the date under Catherine's inscription, 6 months ago. But the medical text's bookmark was a receipt from Henley's, for laudanum. Dated 5 years past. She moved to the window. Jonas stood by the corral, brushing the mules. Beyond him, 50 yards up the meadow, a fence surrounded a small plot, too small for a garden. 1 wooden cross stood at its center. The door scraped. Jonas entered, stopped when he saw the medical text in her hands. "I see you found Catherine's books. Your wife." "Yes. She died 5 years ago." He set his hat on a peg. "Yes. But she inscribed that Jane Eyre 6 months past." Jonas moved to the coffee pot, poured 2 cups. The liquid steamed black. He set 1 cup on the table for her, took his to the window, looked out at the small fenced plot. "No," he said quietly. "She didn't." Margaret's throat closed around the question. Then whose handwriting matched Catherine's, so perfect that even Margaret, who'd won penmanship prizes, couldn't tell them apart. Jonas set his coffee cup on the windowsill. The liquid sloshed, dark ripples catching light. "I wrote it." His fingers traced the window frame. Practiced her hand until I could match it. Took months. Margaret's cup burned through her palm. She set it down, ceramic clicking against wood. "Why?" "Because I needed to give you something that mattered. A book from a woman who'd understand." He turned from the window. "Catherine would have liked you. You don't know me. I know your father offered you up like livestock. Know you came anyway." Jonas moved to the bookshelf, pulled out a ledger. "Know you read. Mrs. Henley mentioned it when I bought supplies yesterday. Said you special ordered books from Denver." Heat crept up Margaret's neck. "Mrs. Henley talks too much." "She does." Jonas opened the ledger, showing neat columns of purchases, dates. "Also said you taught the Hendricks boy his letters when the schoolmarm wouldn't. Said you read to old Mrs. Campbell before she passed." Margaret's throat tightened. "That's not just facts. Miss Morrison." He closed the ledger. "Now, you want to learn to shoot." The change knocked her sideways. "Shoot. Mountain living requires it." Jonas walked to the corner, lifted a rifle from its pegs. Springfield 4570, government issue from the war, reliable. The weapon stretched longer than her arm. Jonas checked the chamber, smooth, practiced motion. "Why would I need to shoot wolves, bears sometimes, men occasionally?" He looked at her straight. "You should know how to protect yourself." From him. He meant from him, too. Margaret's hand went to her hidden money, then dropped. "All right." They went outside. The afternoon sun cut sharp through pine branches. Jonas set up a plank against a dead tree, 50 yards out, came back, handed her the rifle, Weight dropped through her arms. She clutched it, barrel dipping. Here. Jonas moved behind her, not touching. Stock against your shoulder, tight. She pulled it in. The wooden stock pressed through her dress. Cheek to the stock. Look down the barrel. See that little piece of metal at the end? Yes. Line it up with the notch closer to your eye. Put both on the target. Her arms shook. The barrel wavered. Breathe normal. When you're ready, breathe out slow. At the bottom of that breath, squeeze the trigger. Don't pull. Squeeze. The metal trigger felt cold through her wool glove. She breathed out. Squeezed. Thunder cracked. The rifle slammed her shoulder, knocked her back into Jonas. He caught her elbows, steadied her. Smoke drifted bitter. Good. He stepped away. You stayed on your feet. Her shoulder throbbed. The plank stood unmarked. Load another. Jonas handed her a cartridge. Push it in here. Pull this lever down, then up. The mechanism worked stiff. She forced it, raised the rifle again. Remember, bottom of your breath. Thunder. Pain. She stayed planted this time. Wood chips flew from the tree trunk, 3 feet right of the plank. Better. Again. 5 more shots. The last nicked the plank's edge. Her shoulder burned deep, probably purple already under the wool. Jonas took the rifle, set it aside. Tomorrow we'll do more. Now let's eat. Inside, he pulled sourdough starter from a shelf, fed it flour and water, stirring with a wooden spoon worn smooth. Bread needs planning. He covered the crock with cheesecloth. Start tonight for tomorrow's baking. Margaret watched his hands work, clean still, despite the shooting. Nails trimmed even. I'll make supper, she said. We'll make supper. Jonas handed her dried beans from a jar. These need soaking for tomorrow. I'll do the rest tonight. He fried salt pork, made gravy with the drippings, sliced bread from a previous baking, set out butter in a covered dish, honey in a jar, 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 forks and knives. They ate without talking. The silence felt different from her father's house, not angry, just quiet. Jonas refilled her coffee without asking. The books, Margaret said finally. You really want me reading them? Why else have them? Most men don't think women should. Most men are fools. Jonas stood, cleared his plate. Choose what you like. We can discuss them evenings. You want? Margaret washed dishes while Jonas brought in firewood. Her shoulders screamed each time she lifted the kettle. She bit her lip, kept working. Dark came early in the mountains. Jonas lit the oil lamp, adjusted the wick. The light threw shadows that made the cabin feel smaller, warmer. Margaret stood before the bookshelf. So many choices. Her fingers stopped on a green spine. Wuthering Heights, Catherine's favorite. Jonas settled in one chair by the fire. She read it through 3 times. Margaret pulled it free. Inside, the same careful script, property of Catherine Reed. But now she could see at tiny hesitations where Jonas had practiced her letters. The E in Reed slightly off. She took the other chair, opened to chapter 1. Jonas picked up a harness, began mending a broken strap. His knife scraped leather in steady rhythm. The fire popped. Wind pushed against the windows. Margaret read. The Yorkshire moors became Colorado mountains in her mind. Heathcliff's wildness felt familiar now, sitting across from Jonas. Read aloud, if you want. Jonas didn't look up from his work. Catherine used to. Margaret's throat closed, then opened. She started over, voice rough at first. 1801. I have just returned from a visit to my landlord. Jonas's hands slowed on the leather. His breathing deepened. When she glanced up, his eyes were closed, but not sleeping, listening. An hour passed. Her voice gave out. She closed the book. "Thank you." Jonas opened his eyes. "Been 5 years since anyone read in this room." He stood, banked the fire. "Your room has its own stove. Already lit it. Should stay warm through the night." Margaret rose. Her shoulders seized. She couldn't stop the wince. Jonas noticed. Went to a shelf. Pulled down a tin. "Arnica salve. For the bruising." Their fingers brushed as she took it. His skin felt fever hot against hers, or maybe hers was cold. "Good night, Miss Morrison." "Margaret." The name came out without thinking. Just Margaret. "Good night, Margaret." Her room felt warm as promised. She changed into her nightgown, fingers clumsy on the buttons. The bruise spread purple-black from shoulder to breast, perfect rifle stock shape. She rubbed in the salve. It smelled of pine and something medicinal. The pain eased to deep ache. In bed, under Catherine's wedding ring quilt, Margaret stared at the ceiling. Jonas's wife had been dead 5 years. He'd practiced her handwriting for months to forge that inscription. Bought Jane Eyre yesterday in town, thinking of giving it to Margaret, which meant he'd been thinking about her before her father's offer, before the debt. She sat up, pulled her mother's letter from her dress pocket. "Read it again by moonlight through the window. You were born for more than this." But more than what? More than being sold, or more than being alone? Through the wall, she heard Jonas moving in his room, a drawer opening, paper rustling, then a sound she couldn't place, scratching, rhythmic, careful. Margaret pressed her ear to the wall. The scratching continued, stopped, started again. Writing. Jonas was practicing writing. She crept from bed, looked through the crack under the door. Light showed beneath his door, too. The scratching went on, patient as rain. What was he writing? And why did it sound like he was still practicing someone else's hand? Margaret woke to metal against metal. Through her window, Jonas at the pump, filling buckets. Steam rose from his shoulders in the dawn cold. She dressed fast, fingers stiff. The bruise had spread overnight, purple-green down to her elbow. Every movement pulled at something deep. In the main room, coffee already perked on the stove, Jonas came in with the water, set the buckets by the sink. "Morning." He didn't look at her straight on, but she caught him checking her stance, how she held her right arm. "Bread's rising. Be ready to bake in 2 hours. I'll make breakfast." "Already started." He lifted the skillet lid. Venison and wild onions. Grease popping. "But you can finish it." "I need to check the trap line." He took a leather satchel from a hook, slung it across his chest. "Wanna come? Learn the route." The bruise screamed when she nodded. "Yes. Get your coat." Morning still got teeth. Outside, frost crunched under their boots. Jonas led her behind the cabin, up a deer trail through the pines. He moved quiet, weight rolling heel to toe. Margaret tried to copy him. Twigs cracked under her steps. "Here." He stopped at a deadfall. "First trap." The steel jaws sat empty, little pile of dried blood beside it. Jonas knelt, pulled on leather gloves, reset the spring with a stick, careful to keep his fingers clear. Rabbit was here. Got away. Left fur. He showed her brown tufts caught in the teeth. Means the tension's too loose. He adjusted something. The trap looked the same to Margaret, but Jonas nodded, satisfied. They walked higher. Second trap held a rabbit. Neck broke clean. Jonas lifted it out, reset the steel jaws in one motion, tied the rabbit to his belt. "You try the next one." The third trap was sprung but empty. Margaret pulled on her gloves, picked up a stick like Jonas had. The spring fought her. Her bruised shoulder burned. She pressed harder, got the mechanism cocked, set it down gentle. Good, but here. Jonas nudged it with his boot. Wind comes from the west. Animals smell the metal. Face it away. 7 traps total. 2 more rabbits. 1 grouse. Jonas showed her how to tie them proper so they didn't drag. The weight pulled at her waist, oddly satisfying. Back at the cabin, he laid the game on the porch table, pulled out his knife blade worn thin from sharpening. Watch. He made 1 cut below the rabbit's ribs, pulled. The skin came off like taking off a coat. Your turn. Margaret took the knife. The second rabbit stared at her with clouded eyes. She found the spot Jonas had shown, pushed the blade through. The skin separated from the flesh with tiny tearing sounds. She pulled steady. It stuck at the legs. Cut here and here, Jonas pointed. Circles around the ankles. She cut. The pelt came free. Jonas hung it on a stretching frame. Now the insides. Her stomach turned, but her hand stayed steady. 1 slice up the belly. Everything tumbled out in a wet mass. Jonas caught it in a bucket. Save the heart and liver. Rest goes to the chickens. She didn't know he had chickens, but they're a coop she hadn't noticed yesterday. 6 red hens pecking at the dirt. Clean cuts, Jonas said, watching her separate the organs. You've done this before. Helped my grandmother, before she passed. She taught you good. What else she teach? Margaret looked up from the rabbit. Smoking meat, preserving, some healing herbs. Show me the smoking. They carried the cleaned game to the smokehouse, a small shed of cedar planks. Inside, metal hooks hung from rafters. A fire pit sat beneath, cold ashes. Been using oak, Jonas pointed to the woodpile. Works, but makes the meat bitter sometimes. Applewood, Margaret ran her hand along the hooks. Or cherry. Fruit woods burn cooler. Sweeter smoke. My grandmother mixed in sage sometimes, for deer. Got an old apple tree up the ridge. Lightning struck, but wood still good. That would work. They spent the morning cutting the rabbits into portions, rubbing them with salt. Jonas climbed up to fix the roof while Margaret tended the new smoke fire. Applewood smoke curled different lighter, almost blue. Margaret, Jonas called from above. Come see this. She climbed the ladder. He was kneeling by the chimney, pointing at the shingles. Rain runs right into this gap. Been trying to fix it for 2 years. Margaret studied the angle. The shingles overlapped wrong, funneling water toward the cabin instead of away. You need to reverse them. She pointed. Start from the bottom. Work up. Like fish scales. Jonas sat back on his heels. That's right. Why didn't I see that? Sometimes fresh eyes help. He smiled, first real smile she'd seen. Changed his whole face. Made him younger. Fresh eyes. Yeah. They worked through noon. Jonas prying up shingles. Margaret placing them proper. Her shoulders screamed with each reach, but she kept quiet. The sun beat down. Sweat soaked through her dress. Enough! Jonas stood, knees popping. Need food. They climbed down. Inside. The bread had overflowed its pan. Jonas cut off the excess, handed it to her warm. Eat. You're white as paper. She bit into the bread, sour and sweet mixed on her tongue. Jonas fried eggs in the leftover grease, slid 2 onto her plate without asking. After eating, she read while he worked leather, her voice stronger today, carrying through the cabin. Jonas's hands moved in rhythm with the story's cadence. When she stopped to drink water, he looked up. Those clouds. He pointed out the window. See the streaks like horsetails. She looked. Thin white lines across the blue. Mare's tails, we call them, means weather coming. 2, maybe 3 days. How do you know? Lived here 12 years. You learn what the sky's saying. A knock rattled the door. Jonas went rigid. Set down his leather slow. Margaret closed the book. Jonas opened the door part way, body blocking the view. Yes. Letter for Miss Morrison. A young voice, Tommy Hendricks, the boy she'd taught. From town. Jonas took the letter, handed Tommy a coin. The boy's footsteps faded fast down the trail. Jonas gave her the envelope. Her father's writing, sharp and leaning right. She tore it open. Need another $100. Bank wants interest. Jonas Reed has money. Make him give it. You owe me that much. Margaret's hands shook. She passed the letter to Jonas. He read it, face unchanging. That's yours to decide. The paper crumpled in her fist. No. You sure it's your father? I'm sure. She stood. Threw the letter in the stove. It curled black. Became nothing. I decide no. Jonas watched the flames eat the last corner. He might come himself next. Let him. She went to her room. Shut the door. Sat on the bed. Fists clenched. Through the window. She watched Jonas return to the smokehouse, check her applewood fire. He added a branch, adjusted the damper just like she'd shown him. Her hidden money pressed against her ribs. $300. She could give her father $100, make him go away. Or she could keep it all. Stay here, learn to shoot better, smoke meat proper, read books by firelight, not her father's choice, not Jonas's, hers. She went back to the main room. Jonas had moved to his desk in the corner, the one she'd noticed but not examined. Papers spread across it. His pen scratched careful across a page. Margaret moved closer. The writing wasn't Catherine's hand this time. It was different, rounder, softer. She leaned over his shoulder. It was her own handwriting. Perfect copies of her signature from the marriage contract. Line after line of Margaret Morrison in her exact script. Jonas's pen stopped moving. He didn't turn around. Why? Her voice came out rough. Why are you practicing my writing? Jonas set down his pen. Ink gleamed wet on the page, her name written 20 times in her own hand. Your father will come. He turned in the chair, faced her straight. When he does, he'll want you to sign something. Another contract, maybe, or a loan paper. I won't sign anything for him. You might not have a choice. Jonas stood, moved to the window. Men like your father, they know how to force things. But if I can write your name exact, make it legal looking. He stopped. You'd have proof you didn't sign. Protection. Margaret's throat closed. You're forging my signature to protect me. Practicing. In case. He gathered the papers, stacked them neat. Catherine taught me that. Said a woman needs ways to protect herself that don't require strength. What else did she teach you? Jonas looked at the small cemetery plot visible through the window. That I didn't know anything about living with another person. Took me 3 years to learn. 2 more to accept she was gone. That night, Margaret dreamed of town. Mrs. Henley's voice dripped honey thick. Poor Mr. Morrison, saddled with that burden. The minister's wife clutched her daughter's hand. Don't grow up like the Morrison girl. Men want wives, not pack mules. She stood naked in the mercantile, her body expanded with each whisper, filling the aisles, knocking over pickle barrels and bolt fabric. The Hendricks boy pointed. Look how she takes up space. Look how she ruins everything. Her father counted coins on her stomach. Not worth 800, maybe 500, maybe less. She woke gasping. Sweat soaked her nightgown. The room felt too small, walls pressing in. She stumbled to the door, out into the main room. Jonas sat by the dying fire, cup in his hands. He looked up, didn't speak, went to the stove, poured hot water from the kettle, added dried leaves from a jar. Chamomile smell filled the space between them. He set the cup on the table, went back to his chair. Margaret sat, wrapped her hands around the heat. Her breathing slowed. Bad dream. She nodded. Want to talk? No. Then, yes. Jonas waited. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. I was 12 when it started. The words came rough. Got my monthly blood. Body changed fast, too fast. Burst out of my dresses in 3 months. Mother took in the seams, let out the hems, but nothing fit right. Jonas added a log to the fire, said nothing. The Olsen boys started mooing when I walked to school. Other kids laughed. Teacher said nothing. I stopped going. She sipped the tea, bittersweet on her tongue. Mother taught me at home after that. Reading, numbers. Said education mattered more than what people said. Smart woman. She was. Margaret's fingers tightened on the cup. She got sick my 15th winter. Lung fever. Doctor said mountain air might help. But father wouldn't move. Said the farm was worth more than... She stopped. More than her life. More than anything. The words scraped out. She died that spring. Last thing she said was, "Don't let them make you small. Margaret, you were born to take up space." Jonas stirred the fire with an iron poker. Sparks spiraled up. But I did. Let them make me small. Walked with my shoulders hunched. Spoke quiet. Ate alone so they wouldn't see how much food I needed. Mrs. Campbell was the only one who treated me normal. Read to her twice a week until she passed. The Hendricks boy. You taught him letters. His mother asked, paid me in eggs. Only money I ever earned myself. Besides, she stopped again. Besides what? Margaret set down the cup, went to her room, came back with her mother's letter, handed it to Jonas. He read it slow. $300. She saved that for you. Sewing money, mending for the rich families in town. Hid it from father. Margaret took back the letter. I could run. Right now. Tonight. Could. Jonas leaned back in his chair. Where would you go? Denver, maybe. St. Louis. And do what? I don't know. Seamstress work. Teaching. Something. Jonas stood, walked to the bookshelf, pulled out a leather journal. Catherine left because she couldn't do something, had to do specific things. Real things. He opened the journal, showed her a page. Her lists, everything she missed about Boston. Margaret read the careful writing. Concerts, restaurants, dress shops, other women to talk to, streets with lamps, doctors nearby, letters that arrive daily, not monthly. She tried. Jonas closed the journal. God knows she tried. But mountains get inside some people wrong, make them feel trapped instead of free. How did she die? Consumption. Started before we moved here, but she hid it. Thought mountain air would cure her, like doctors said, but isolation killed her faster than disease. He put the journal back. Found her one morning coughing blood into the wash basin. Took her to town. Doctor said it was too late. Had been for years. But you stayed. After... Where else would I go? Jonas returned to his chair. I know this place. These mountains. They don't judge. Don't whisper. Just exist. Is that why you bought me? Because Catherine's gone and you're lonely? Jonas looked at her direct. I didn't buy you. Father has $800 says different. Your father has $820. 20 extra was my idea. Jonas picked up the poker, adjusted a log. Told him it was for your traveling clothes. But it wasn't. What was it for? Your first month's wages. Margaret's chest tightened. Wages. You work here, cooking, cleaning, hunting, fixing roofs, apparently. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. That's worth $20 a month plus board. More if you can really smoke meat like you claim. But the contract says you'll live here, work here. Doesn't say your property. I wrote it myself, careful with the words. Jonas stood. You can leave any time. I'll take you back to town tomorrow if you want, or to the train station in Millsville. Your choice. Margaret stared at him. Why would you do that? Because Catherine was right about one thing. Women need protection that don't require strength. He moved toward his room, stopped at the door. Your mother was right too. You were born to take up space. Just need to find the right space to take up. He went to his room, closed the door soft. Margaret sat by the dying fire, counting heartbeats. $20 a month. In a year, she'd have $240. Add her mother's $300. She stood, walked to Jonas's desk. The papers with her forged signature were gone, but underneath his ledger lay another document. She pulled it out. A will. Jonas Reed's last will and testament. Dated yesterday. Leaving the cabin, the land, everything to Margaret Morrison, who has earned the right to space and safety. Her hands trembled. She heard footsteps behind her, Jonas returning. She turned, holding the will. You wrote this yesterday before you came for me. Jonas stood in his doorway. After I bought the book. After I decided to accept your father's offer. But you didn't know me. I knew enough. Knew you taught kids their letters for eggs. Read to dying women for nothing. Knew your father thought you worthless. His voice hardened on the last word. Knew you deserved better than what town could give you. So you're giving me everything if you die. We all die. Mountains are dangerous. Accidents happen. He paused. Or sometimes men from town come calling. Don't like what they find. Margaret set down the will. You think they'll come? The men from town. I know they will. Jonas moved closer. Close enough she could smell the wood smoke in his clothes. Question is whether you'll be ready when they do. Ready how? Jonas walked to the rifle rack. Took down the Springfield and a box of cartridges. Ready to show them you're not the same woman who left town 3 days ago. He handed her the rifle. This time, the weight felt lighter. Or maybe her arms were already stronger. Tomorrow we practice until you can hit that plank 10 times straight. Then we start on moving targets. Why moving targets? Jonas's face went stone still. Because men don't stand still when they're trying to take what's yours. Through the window, Margaret saw movement in the trees, a shadow where no shadow should be. Jonas saw it too. His hand moved to the door latch, checking the lock. Might be nothing, he said quiet. Might be deer. But the way his other hand rested on his hip, where Margaret now noticed he wore a revolver she hadn't seen before, said he didn't think it was deer. Jonas blew out the oil lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. Margaret's eyes adjusted slow moonlight through windows, ember glow from the fireplace. Get low. His voice came soft beside her ear. Below window line. She crouched. Her knees popped. The rifle barrel knocked against the table leg. Jonas moved silent to the front window, peered around the frame edge. Nothing. Trees black against stars. Wind through pine needles. Then horses snorting. At least 2. Coming up the trail. Root cellar. Jonas pointed to the trap door near the kitchen. Now. But they're looking for you. Don't give them easy sight. He pulled his revolver. Checked the cylinder. Go. Margaret lifted the trap door. Wooden ladder down into earth-smelled darkness. She climbed down backwards, rifle awkward in one hand. 7 rungs. Dirt floor cold through her stockings, she'd forgotten shoes. The space stretched larger than expected. Shelves of preserves, barrels of apples, potatoes in bins, enough food for months. A small oil lamp hung from a beam. She didn't light it. Footsteps above. Jonas moving to the door. The bolt sliding back. "Gentlemen," his voice carried clear through the floorboards. "Late for visiting?" "Reed," a voice she recognized, Frank Henley, the mercantile owner's son. "We come to check on the Morrison girl. Miss Morrison retired for the evening?" "That's so." Another voice, Tom Olson, the one who'd started the mooing years back. "Awful early for bed." "Mountain hours." Jonas stayed in the doorway. Margaret could tell by how their voices stayed outside. "State your business." "Like I said, checking on Margaret, making sure she's comfortable." Frank's tone oozed false concern. "Whole town's worried. Big adjustment for a girl like her." "She's adjusting fine. We'd like to hear that from her." Third voice, Bill Patterson, the bank manager's nephew. "Fetch her out?" "No." Silence. Then Tom Olson laughed. "No, you got something to hide. Reed, I got nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Miss Morrison is here of her own choice. That's all you need to know." "Her own choice?" Frank's voice turned ugly. "What choice does a cow like her have? You doing her a charity, taking that burden off Morrison's hands? Least we can do is make sure she's grateful." Margaret's fingernails cut into her palms, her jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. "Grateful?" Jonas's voice dropped lower. "For what?" "For you taking her in. Can't be easy. Looking at that every day. All that excess." Tom Olson spat. She heard it hit the porch boards. "Must be like betting a sow." The rifle stock pressed cold against Margaret's cheek. She'd raised it without thinking, sighting up through the floorboards like they were targets. "You need to leave." Jonas hadn't moved from the doorway. "Now, or what you'll shoot us for caring about the girl's welfare." Bill Patterson trying to sound reasonable. "We just want to see her. Make sure she understands the arrangement. Sometimes girls like her get ideas. Think men actually want them for more than work. Especially with a man been alone as long as you." Frank again. "Might be taking advantage. Might be telling her pretty lies. Getting free labor and other services." Wood creaked. Jonas stepping onto the porch. "Get on your horses." "Not without seeing her." Tom Olson firm now. "We got a right. Christian duty to protect the weak-minded." "Weak-minded." Jonas's laugh came sharp as winter ice. "That woman's got more mind than the three of you combined." "That woman," Frank mocking. "You sweet on the fat girl? Reed Mountain make you that desperate?" Margaret set down the rifle, climbed the ladder, each rung deliberate, no shaking. She pushed open the trap door. The men stood clustered at the porch edge. Jonas blocked the doorway still, hand resting on his revolver. All four turned at the sound. Margaret emerged full into the lamplight spilling from the cabin. Barefoot, hair loose, nightgown covered by her wool shawl. She didn't hunch, didn't make herself smaller. "Gentlemen," her voice carried steady across the space, "I hear you're concerned for my welfare." Tom Olson's mouth opened, closed. Frank Henley stepped backward, boot catching on a loose board. She moved to the rifle rack, lifted the Springfield, checked the chamber like Jonas taught her smooth, practiced, walked out onto the porch. "Margaret," Bill Patterson started. "Miss Morrison." She kept the rifle casual, pointed down but ready. "I'm nobody's Christian duty. We just," Frank stammered. "Your father asked us to check. My father sold me for $800. Did he mention that?" She stepped closer to Jonas, not behind him but beside. "Or did he say he was concerned?" Silence. Tom Olson's face flushed red even in the darkness. "You're looking well," Bill Patterson managed. "Different. Fed, rested, armed." Margaret let the rifle barrel rise slightly. "That different enough? No need for threats." Frank raised his hands. "We're leaving." "Good." She centered the rifle on Tom Olson. Tom, you still making animal sounds at women, or did you grow out of that? His face went purple. I never. You did. Every day for 3 years. The rifle stayed steady. Mooing. Oinking. Teaching other kids to do the same. That was just fun. Kid stuff. Was it fun when Annie Olson cried because her big brother taught her to torment other children? Margaret's voice stayed level. She apologized, Years later, said you made her do it. Tom's hands clenched. You got no right. I've got every right. She lowered the rifle. I live here. This is my land, too. And you're trespassing. Frank found his voice. Your land. You're just hired help. Jonas spoke quiet. Show them the will. Margaret. She looked at him. He nodded toward the cabin. She understood. Make them know it's real. Margaret went inside, rifle still in hand, grabbed the will from Jonas's desk, came back out, unfolded it in the lamplight. Last will and testament of Jonas Reed, she read clear. Leaving house, land, and all possessions to Margaret Morrison. That's not legal. Bill Patterson, the banker's nephew, trying to sound authoritative. Women can't inherit property without what a husband father's permission. Jonas stepped forward. Check the law. Patterson, Colorado Territory, allows women full property rights. Has for 15 years. The 3 men looked at each other. Frank Henley pulled at his collar. This is crazy. Tom Olson pointed at Margaret. You can't just give everything to her. She's... What? Margaret raised the rifle again. Fat, ugly. A burden. You're not yourself. Bill Patterson trying for reasonable again. This man's influenced you. Made you think. Think what? That I deserve respect. That I can shoot straight. That I'm worth more than the names you called me. The rifle barrel tracked between them. Jonas didn't teach me that. My mother did. Jonas just gave me space to remember it. We're going. Frank backed toward his horse. But this isn't over. Your father can go to hell. Margaret said it calm, as stating the weather. Tell him I said so. The men mounted their horses. Tom Olson turned in his saddle. You'll regret this when he leaves you. He pointed at Jonas. When you see what you really are without his charity. Jonas drew his revolver. Didn't aim it, just held it visible. Tom, you got 10 seconds to be off my property. They rode off fast, hooves thundering down the trail. Margaret lowered the rifle. Her hands shook now. After. Jonas holstered his revolver. You did good. They'll be back. Maybe. He took the rifle from her, set it against the porch rail. Maybe with more men, maybe with your father. Let them come. Margaret picked up the will, folded it careful. I'm done running from voices that tell me I'm nothing. They went inside. Jonas barred the door, a thick wooden beam she hadn't noticed before. He checked all the windows, drew the curtains. Tea. He moved to the stove. Coffee. Strong. He made it without comment. They sat at the table, cups between them. The clock on the mantel ticked loud. The will. Margaret traced the cup rim with one finger. You meant that all of it. Every word. But we've known each other 4 days. Jonas looked at her straight. I knew Catherine 6 years. Thought I understood her. Turned out I didn't know anything. He sipped his coffee. Sometimes 4 days of truth worth more than years of pretty lies. What if they come back with the sheriff, say you're holding me against my will? Then you tell the sheriff different. Jonas stood, went to his desk, pulled out another paper. Unless... He said it before her. A marriage certificate. Blank except for the date, tomorrow's date. Margaret read it twice. You're proposing, I'm offering legal protection. Married women have more rights. Harder for your father to claim authority. Jonas sat back down. It'd be a business arrangement. Nothing changes. Separate rooms. You still earn wages. And if I want things to change, Jonas went very still. What kind of things? Before Margaret could answer, glass shattered. A rock bounced across the floor, paper tied around it with string. Jonas grabbed the rifle, moved to the broken window. Margaret picked up the rock, untied the paper. Her father's handwriting, but shaky. Drunk, maybe. Bring my daughter back or I bring the sheriff. You got one day. Jonas nailed a board over the broken window. Each hammer blow echoed through Margaret's skull. Glass crunched under his boots. She swept the shards into a dustpan, dumped them in the ash bucket. One day. Jonas set the hammer down. He gave us one day. He gave you one day. I'm not going back. Jonas pulled out a chair, sat heavy. Oil lamplight caught the lines around his eyes deeper than she'd noticed before. Sheriff won't care what you want. Your father has legal claim. Unless I'm married. The marriage certificate lay on the table between them. Margaret's finger traced the blank spaces where their names would go. That's not a reason to marry. Jonas pulled the certificate toward him. Fear's no foundation for, I'm not afraid. Margaret pulled it back. Not anymore. She stood, walked to her room, came back with her mother's money, laid the bills on the table, 10s and 20s spread like playing cards. Jonas stared. Where did you? My mother saved it for me to run. Margaret sat back down. $300, enough to get to Denver, maybe California. Start over where nobody knows me. Then why? Because running means they win, means I agree I'm worthless here. She gathered the bills, stacked them neat. I could take this money, disappear, be nobody somewhere else. Or I could stay, sign that paper, be somebody here. She pushed the money toward him. Buy into the land proper, not charity, partnership. Jonas pushed the money back. Don't want your money, but I need to give it. Need this to be my choice, not just the best of bad options. Jonas stood, paced to the stove, poured coffee that had gone bitter from sitting. You don't know me. Not really. I know enough. Do you? He turned, cup in hand. No, I killed 3 men first year up here. Claimed jumpers tried to take the land. Shot them all. Buried them up the ridge where spring floods would take the bodies. Margaret's stomach clenched, but she held his gaze. Self-defense. Maybe I could have wounded them. Run them off. Jonas set down the cup. No, I left Catherine alone for 3 days while she was dying. Went hunting because I couldn't watch her cough up more blood. You came back. Too late. Found her on the floor. Crawled halfway to the door. His knuckles went white against the table edge. Know why I really agreed to your father's offer? Tell me. Because I'm tired of talking to myself. Tired of cooking for one. Tired of reading Catherine's books and pretending she might walk through that door. He sat back down, heavy. That's selfish. Using you to fill an empty space. Margaret leaned forward. Know what I know. You practiced my signature to protect me before we'd even met. You gave me a loaded rifle on day 1, taught me to use it. You stood back tonight, let me face them myself instead of playing savior. Basic decency. No. She stood, moved around the table. Not basic, not common, extraordinary. She stopped in front of his chair. He looked up at her. This close. She could see gold flecks in his brown eyes, smell the coffee on his breath. Stand up. He stood. They were almost the same height, her maybe an inch taller. Strange to look straight across at a man. Not up. You see me? Her hand rose to his cheek, stubble rough against her palm. Not through me or around me or despite me, just me, Margaret. My turn to talk. Her other hand found his shoulder. 4 days. You're right. Not enough to know everything. But I know this: you're the first person since my mother died who makes me want to take up space instead of shrinking. Jonas's hand covered hers on his shoulder. You sure? Ask me better questions. What do you want? To matter. To work beside someone. Not for them. To read books aloud by the fire. Her thumb traced his cheekbone. To wake up unashamed of my body. What else? This. She kissed him. Quick. Nervous. Pulling back to see his face. His eyes stayed closed an extra second. When they opened, something had shifted. My turn. His hand cupped the back of her neck. Gentle. You sure? Yes. He kissed her back. Slower. His other arm came around her waist. Not grabbing. Just holding. She felt the moment his breathing changed. Deepened. Her own chest tightened. But not from fear. They broke apart. Her lips tingled. His hand stayed on her neck. The certificate, she said, can wait for morning, when we're clear-headed. I'm clear now. Jonas stepped back, but kept hold of her hand. Then I need to tell you something else. More bodies buried on the ridge. No. Almost a smile. About Catherine. Margaret's chest tightened, different now. What about her? She wasn't. We weren't. Jonas pulled her to sit beside him. We lived as friends those last 2 years. She couldn't. The disease made things difficult, painful. You don't have to explain. I do. Because if we sign that paper, if we do this, I need you to know it's not about replacing her. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. It's about choosing you. And if I choose you back, then we figure out what that means, day by day. He stood, pulled her up with him. But tonight, you need sleep. Tomorrow your father brings the sheriff. Where will you sleep, your bed or the chair? Jonas looked toward his room, then at the chair by the fire. Chair. Want to hear if anyone else comes calling? Margaret walked to her door, stopped. Jonas. Yeah. The first time you saw me. At the table with my father. What did you think? He was quiet long enough she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, thought you looked like someone drowning in plain sight, and everyone on shore pretending not to notice. What else? Thought you had beautiful hands. Margaret looked at her hands, broad, calloused, nothing delicate about them. Beautiful, strong, capable, steady. He moved to the chair, pulled a blanket from behind it. The kind that could build something, or hold something, or shoot something if needed. She went to her room, closed the door soft, changed into her nightgown with trembling fingers. The marriage certificate lay on the table in the main room, waiting for morning, for clear heads and hard choices. Through the thin wall, she heard Jonas settling in the chair. The rifle laid across his lap, she knew the sound now. Guardian against whatever might come in the night. Margaret pulled her mother's letter from under her pillow. Read it one more time by moonlight. You were born for more than this. More. But what if more wasn't a place to run to? What if more was a person who saw your worth before you did? She folded the letter, placed it back under the pillow, lay down under Catherine's quilt, through the window. Stars sharp as glass shards. Tomorrow the sheriff would come. Tomorrow she'd have to choose run, fight, or sign her name next to Jonas's. But tonight, for the first time in years, her body didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a vessel, something that could carry her toward whatever morning brought. A floorboard creaked in the main room. Then another. Not Jonas moving in his chair, someone trying to be quiet. Margaret sat up, reached for the rifle Jonas had left in her room for emergencies. The one he'd loaded but said, "Hope you never need." The footsteps stopped right outside her door. The doorknob began to turn, but she'd thrown the latch like Jonas taught her. The door held. The knob rattled harder. Then a voice, slurred with drink. "Margaret, honey, it's Papa. Come to take you home." The doorknob rattled harder. Margaret raised the rifle, barrel aimed chest high at the door. "Open up, girl. Don't make this difficult." Through the door crack at the floor shadow of his boots, shifting weight. The sour stench of whiskey seeped through. "Jonas!" Her father's voice turned mean. "I know you're out there. Got a legal right to my daughter." Chair legs scraped in the main room. Jonas's footsteps. Deliberate. Not rushing. "Morrison, you're drunk." So what? She's still mine to collect. Doors locked for a reason. Come back with the sheriff if you got legal claim. Glass smashed another window. Margaret heard Jonas curse. Moved toward the sound. Her father's shoulder hit her door. The wood groaned but held. "Margaret, honey, your papa needs you." His voice went wheedling, the tone he used when she was small and he wanted her to fetch something. "Made a mistake. Shouldn't have sent you off. Come home where you belong." Margaret stood, rifle heavy, moved to the door, mouth close to the wood. "I am home." Silence. Then his fist hammered the door. "You open this goddamn door right now." "No. I'll break it down. Try it." Jonas's voice came closer. "See what happens. You threatening me. Read. Stating facts. Break my property. There's consequences." "She's my property." "No." Margaret pulled back the latch, opened the door 6 inches, rifle barrel visible in the gap. "I'm nobody's property." Her father stood swaying in the lamplight, shirt untucked, vest missing buttons, his eyes bloodshot, unfocused until they found the rifle. Then they sharpened. "You'd shoot your own father. You'd sell your own daughter." He lunged for the door. Margaret stepped back, rifle rising. Jonas caught her father's arm, spun him into the wall. Her father swung wild, missed. Jonas pinned him easy, one arm twisted behind his back. "Enough." Jonas's voice stayed level. "You're leaving." "Not without her. Need the money back." "Need." Her father's words slurred together. "Told everyone she'd come back. Told them I'd made a mistake. They laughed. Whole town laughed at me." "Good." Margaret stepped into the main room, rifle lowered but ready. "Now you know how it feels." Her father's face twisted. "You got fat like your mother. Both disappointments. Both." Jonas's hand covered his mouth. "Don't finish that sentence." Her father mumbled against Jonas's palm. Jonas walked him to the door, shoved him onto the porch. Her father stumbled, caught himself on the rail. "The sheriff? Won't find us here tomorrow." Jonas stood in the doorway. "We're going to town, to the courthouse, getting married legal and proper." Margaret's chest tightened. They hadn't decided, unless Margaret says different. Jonas looked back at her. "Her choice." Her father laughed. Ugly sound. "Who else would have her? You're doing charity. Read. Taking on that burden." Margaret set down the rifle. Walked to the doorway. Her father stopped talking, something in her face making him step backward. "I choose Jonas." Each word deliberate. "I choose this life, this place, and you're not welcome in it. You can't leave." She picked up the rifle again. "Now, or I'll have Jonas drag you to your horse." Her father looked between them. His shoulders sagged, fight going out of him like air from a punctured bellows. "You'll regret this, when he tires of you." "Goodbye, Papa." Jonas walked him to his horse, helped him mount. Her father swayed in the saddle but stayed up, rode off without looking back. Jonas returned, barred the door. They stood in the lamplit room, broken glass glinting on the floor. 2 windows to board now. You meant it, Jonas asked. About choosing? Yes. The courthouse? Tomorrow? Yes. He moved to the table, picked up the marriage certificate, found a pen, signed his name careful on the line, handed her the pen. Margaret signed below his name, her real signature, not practiced or forged, her hand steady. We should sleep, Jonas said. Long ride tomorrow. Your bed or mine? The question hung between them. Jonas set down the certificate. Mine's bigger. 6 months later. Margaret knelt in the garden soil, mapping out rows with string and stakes. Spring had come late but warm. Snowmelt fed the creek constant, the sound carrying across the meadow. Squash here, she pointed to the south corner, catches morning sun. Beans along the fence. Jonas drove another stake. They'll climb. Tomatoes need protection from wind. Build a break here. He indicated the west side. 3 feet should do. They'd done this every morning for a week planning, adjusting, arguing gentle about placement. The garden would be 3 times what Jonas had grown alone. Margaret's idea. But he'd agreed quick enough. More vegetables meant more to preserve, more to trade in town. Margaret, Jonas straightened, hand shading his eyes. Riders coming. 2 horses on the trail. Margaret stood, brushed dirt from her apron. Her rifle leaned against the fence habit now, keeping it close, but Jonas relaxed as the riders got closer. It's the Hendricks, Tommy and his mother. Mrs. Hendricks had aged in 6 months, more gray in her hair, deeper lines around her mouth. Tommy had grown, shoulders broader, voice dropped when he called out, Mrs. Reed, Mr. Reed. Margaret's married name still felt new on her tongue. Mrs. Hendricks. Tommy? The woman dismounted, careful, pulled a basket from her saddlebag. Brought you a wedding gift. No, it's late, but... She shrugged. Took time to work up courage. Inside the basket, a tablecloth, embroidered with mountain laurel. Fine work, months of stitching. It's beautiful. Margaret ran her fingers over the threads. Thank you. Wanted to say something else. Mrs. Hendricks glanced at her son, then back. I'm sorry. For the years of saying nothing. For letting my boy see cruelty as normal. Tommy shifted on his feet. I'm sorry too, Mrs. Reed. For laughing. For not speaking up. Margaret set down the basket. Thank you for that. There's more. Mrs. Hendricks pulled out an envelope. From town. Several families wanted to, well, inside a letter signed by 12 names. Apologies. Invitations to tea. Welcome to the Married Women's Sewing Circle. They want me in their circle. Margaret couldn't hide the edge in her voice. Want is, maybe, strong. Mrs. Hendricks smiled small. But they know you're Mrs. Reed now. Your husband owns land. Trades fair. Helps with barn raisings. Makes you respectable. My marriage makes me respectable. No. Jonas came to stand beside her. You were always respectable. Marriage just makes them see it. Mrs. Hendricks nodded slow. He's right. We were blind. Some of us know that now. They stayed for coffee. Tommy talked about his letters, how he was reading books now. Mrs. Hendricks shared town gossip the Olsen boys had moved to Denver. Her father had sold the farm to pay drinking debts, disappeared east after they left. Margaret and Jonas walked to town for supplies. Her chin stayed level as they entered Main Street. People stared, but different now. Some nodded. Mrs. Patterson actually smiled. At Henley's Mercantile. Margaret selected fabric, a blue cotton, a green wool. Good fabric, not the cheap stuff. For new dresses, Mr. Henley asked, wrapping the purchase. Yes. She met his eyes straight. I need larger sizes. My husband likes me well fed. Jonas appeared with a sack of coffee beans. 10 pounds of flour, too. Henley, Margaret's teaching me her grandmother's biscuit recipe. They loaded the wagon. Margaret chose to walk rather than ride, Jonas beside her leading the mules. Through town in daylight, her body taking up all the space it needed. That evening, they sat on the porch Jonas had built wider, strong enough for 2 chairs. Margaret read Whitman aloud while Jonas carved spoons for daily use. Nothing fancy. The spring air carried pine sap and creek sound. Listen to this part. Margaret found her favorite passage. I celebrate myself, and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Jonas set down his knife. Read it again. She did. His hand found hers between the chairs, not grasping, just holding. True words, he said. True life. She closed the book. Jonas. That first day. You said I was drowning in plain sight. I did. What am I now? Jonas turned her hand over, traced the calluses from rifle work, the burn scar from yesterday's bread making, the ink stain on her thumb, swimming strong, in water that fits you. Later, in bed, his bed, their bed now. Margaret listened to his breathing deepen toward sleep, her body curved against his, no longer apologizing for its size, his arm draped over her waist, hand splayed across her belly. Through the window, stars in the corner of the small cemetery. Catherine's grave tended but not worshipped, part of the landscape now, like the rocks and trees, present but not haunting. Margaret thought about the women in town, their late invitation to respectability. Her father, dissolved into whiskey and distance, the girl she'd been, shrinking in doorways, speaking in whispers. All of it led here, to this cabin, this bed, this man who saw her true from the first moment, who gave her a rifle before he gave her a ring, who stood behind her, not in front, when trouble came calling. Jonas whispered, in case he slept. Yeah. I was given away as burden. His arm tightened around her. I know. I was received as myself. Yes. Now I'm neither. I'm home. Jonas kissed her shoulder through the nightgown. Been home since the day you stood up to those men. Just took time to recognize it. Margaret smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow they'd plant the garden. Next week, she'd go to the sewing circle, head high, someday, perhaps. There'd be children who'd grow up seeing their mother take up all the space she needed. But tonight, she simply existed, full-bodied and unashamed, chosen and choosing, no longer the Morrison burden, or even Mrs. Jonas Reed, just Margaret. Finally, fully, just Margaret. Some stories find us when we need them most. This one came to me during my own season of feeling unseen, when the world seemed determined to shrink me into acceptable shapes. Margaret's journey from burden to beloved isn't about transformation. She was always whole. It's about finding someone who sees that wholeness without needing to fix or save it. Jonas understood something crucial. Real love doesn't rescue. It witnesses. It stands beside, not in front. It hands you the rifle and teaches you to shoot. Then steps back when trouble comes, trusting your aim. In those Colorado mountains, Margaret didn't become someone new. She remembered who she'd always been, just needed the right soil to grow in. We all carry voices that name us wrong burden. Too much, not enough. But somewhere, there's a voice that speaks truer. Maybe it's a person like Jonas. Maybe it's a place that lets you breathe full. Maybe it's your own voice, finally loud enough to drown out the lies. Margaret chose to stay, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she'd found where she belonged. That's the difference between settling and choosing. One diminishes. The other declares, I am worth the space I take. Disclaimer. This is a work of fiction created solely for entertainment purposes. The story does not condone, promote, or encourage any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters and events are entirely fictional, products of imagination, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. The narrative is set in the 1880s American frontier and reflects historical contexts, not contemporary values or recommendations for real-world actions or relationships.